Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackie and Judd on SKOR North and SKORNorth.com.
Is he your guy?
God, look at that.
Gosh.
Yowza.
Yuck. Yuck.
Look at Matt Ryan. Wow.
Yuck.
How about Deshaun Watson paid that money?
I forgot Deshaun Watson for a second. $45 million for Kirk Cousins. 20%.
It's a lot.
Danielle Hunter is a free agent. What are we going to do with him? They got to pick up his option before this thing. Everyone says, well, they'll restructure. Sean, you played the game. You signed a contract.
Yeah.
Do you have to restructure because everyone says you should restructure? Or could Kirk Cousins dig his feet and be like, no. I'm under
Back it
contract. You paid me that.
Yep.
You signed me. I would have signed with another team.
Good morning, football. And for the audio audience, they had a ranking of the top 5 quarterback cap hits going into 2022, and Cousins is third at $45 million behind Aaron Rodgers, and Matt Ryan's been up at he's like $47 million or something on that cap hit for the Falcons. Matt Ryan and the Falcons are what happened when you kick the can down the road for a number of years.
Yep.
Pretty much where the
and if you don't win a championship, it hurts. If you come close, it hurts. If you win one, you don't care.
Yeah. So, all right, Mackie and Judd, happy Reckless Speculation Thursday, everybody.
Reckless speculation.
That means it's time for a scoop session with our guy. He is part of the 5 Eyewitness News sports department. Inside information about your favorite Minnesota sports teams, the Scoop Podcast. Darren Doogie Wolfson, happy Reckless Speculation Thursday.
Good morning, Philip. Good morning, Judd. Good morning, Declan. I am here to celebrate. Phil, it wasn't just quarterbacks. It was everybody, right? It's not like there's a defensive lineman or cornerback with a cap hit that high. So Matt Ryan, number 1 in the entire National Football League. Aaron Rodgers, number 2. Kirk Cousins, number 3. I love Peter Schrager. Is it Schrager?
Yeah.
He's rock solid, yeah. And he's right. Like, Judd and I, Phil, did a deep dive on Tuesday on the Cousins conundrum. There just isn't evidence to suggest, going back many years, many different contract negotiations, that he is willing to take a significant pay cut. Heck, I'm not even quite sure he's willing to take a minuscule pay cut. So something needs to take place with that situation. I just have a hard time believing the Vikings, because it is one of the 3 scenarios. We've laid out the 3 scenarios. You trade him, you extend him to lower his 2022 number, or you just ride this thing out. Of the 3 scenarios, that last one just doesn't seem plausible. It just doesn't seem likely. So something has to give in the very near future.
Well, that's an interesting lead-in here to the first topic of the day on Reckless Speculation Thursday, because that fork in the road, that contractual fork in the road where something has to happen, might be the reason for some hesitation when Kevin O'Connell speaks about Kirk Cousins. And all of us are friends with Chad Hartman. Doogie used to be Chad's producer on the Fan back in the day, and Chad had Kevin O'Connell on WCCO radio yesterday. We don't have the ability to play the clip. We don't have permission to play the clip. I'm going to read you just the first. So Chad asked Kevin he asked him a very pointed question. Without hesitation, can you say that Kirk Cousins will be on the Vikings roster come training camp? Right? Pretty black and white pointed question.
Great question, too, by the way. I mean, going back many, many years, I'm biased because of our relationship, but there's not a better interviewer in town than Chad Hartman.
Yeah.
It was strategic. It was calculated the way he asked that question. It was a great question.
And so without hesitation, can you tell us whether Kirk Cousins will be on the Vikings roster come training camp? And the first words out of Kevin O'Connell's mouth were, quote, "Training camp is a long way in my mind from a standpoint of what any position may look like." End quote.
End quote, or at least end sentence. He then gave 30 or 45 seconds on previous working relationship with Kirk. We worked together in Washington. But yes, the headline is those first 10 to 15 words, right? He tap danced slightly. I think the question threw him off a little bit. And yeah, training camp is a long way off. Phil, the way I analyze that is something needs to happen with the contract that they don't know. I'm positive phone calls are taking place. Like, Judd, we know this for a fact, right? The Green Bay Packers today have trade offers on the table for Aaron Rodgers.
That was reported today. Yes, exactly right.
The Vikings, like the Packers, are receiving phone calls. There's outbound phone calls. Yeah, I think things ramp up next week at the Combine in Indianapolis. But behind the scenes, so much is happening right now.
And so on O'Connell's quote to Chad, let's backtrack 1 week. A week ago today, O'Connell is introduced at TCO for the first time. And the first time that he's asked the question in a roundabout way that Chad asked very directly was at said press conference. And O'Connell gave an answer that started with he's under contract. And then he elaborated a bit, and he was, much stronger at that time than he was with Chad. Kwesi Adolphus-Mensah was sitting at the table with O'Connell. And I looked at him, and I could see a look of, you're going a little bit strong here. Like, keep it more vague.
Body language breakdown. Yeah. I love it, Judd.
And that's when Kwesi came back, and because the person said, can you please also address the question? And Kwesi at that time said, I'm happy, he's happy, which is the most roundabout way to get around answering the direct question as possible. And then
reckless speculation.
So then after that press conference, KOC went on the flagship with Dan Barrero and was pretty much asked the same question. And I thought he gave as strong of answer as he was going to possibly give about Kirk being this team's quarterback in 2022. And I thought, oh, that's pretty strong. And I found it very intriguing, guys, that by yesterday, the answer had become much more corporate, much more uncertain.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, this is how this works, right?
I mean, Judd, if I ask you, Judd, listen, you've been with Dawn for quite some time here. Can you confirm without any ambiguity that you and Dawn will be together when football season starts next year? And you say, well, football season's a long way away.
Well, no, what I would say is you never know what's going to happen at our age day to day. Phil, I can't tell you if I'm going to wake up tomorrow, okay?
Yeah, anything can happen.
Much less speak for my beautiful and lovely wife. And so I can't assure you of that. Anything can happen. And that's why, Phil, I take things, and Dukes and Dex, Judd Zolgad takes things day to day because you never know. So, but the answers are getting much more honed, I think, as far as trying to leave the door open in 1 week.
Well, I mean, I think the door has been open since those public comments at the introductory press conference 1 week ago. Now, you know, he opens the door maybe even a little bit more with Chad. He'll meet the media next Wednesday at the Combine. I believe it's Wednesday. Kwesi goes Tuesday, and Kevin goes Wednesday. So inevitably those questions will come up in 6 days. I'm telling you, like, there's no evidence to suggest, okay, so Cousins, no on for sure a significant pay cut, but I'm not even quite sure about a minuscule pay cut. And there's no evidence to suggest that the Vikings are hanging up the phone, that they are going to listen. And with a number of teams, Carolina, Judd, you had that steam earlier this week. I'll add, with Phil now in the conversation, I checked. So, Phil, going back to last Monday when Judd had this Panthers Cousins steam, just that Carolina, initiated some dialogue. Not that anything is on the cusp of happening. But I said to Judd on Tuesday, Phil, now you can hear this, a couple people with direct knowledge going back, well, about 2 years ago. Remember there was a WFAN radio reporter / host who suggested the Vikings were in dialogue with the Browns. This was like in 2020 about a trade for OBJ. Maybe you remember that report. I reached out to somebody that would have direct knowledge of these Cousins talks. This person 2 years ago said, BS, baloney, nothing going on. Got right back to me via text. Nothing going on with Cleveland. That report is bogus. Then there was a report in October around the trade deadline that the Vikings were in conversations with the Miami Dolphins about cornerback Xavier Howard. Or is it Xavier Howard? Whoever it is.
Xavier, yep.
Yeah, Xavier. So the star cornerback for Miami, Howard. And a different official who would have direct knowledge of what's going on with Cousins texted me right back and said, BS. We are not talking to Miami about Howard. I did reach out to these two people about Judd's steam with Carolina. Neither got back to me. So interpret that as you wish. Now, somebody close to Kirk said, for what it's worth, I've not heard that. I've not heard of Carolina showing interest in Kirk. I also will tell you that a ranked official pretty high up an AFC team's food chain, he doesn't have a stake in the game, but I texted with him just saying, hey, you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the league. How do you foresee this Cousins situation playing out? He thinks in the end Cousins will be here. Okay. But this is not somebody with direct knowledge. I'm just telling you, two people with direct knowledge who have gotten back to me on previous trade chatter reports, neither got back to me. So, I'm not here to debunk or confirm. I'm just laying out the evidence. But Carolina's one team that needs a quarterback. Pittsburgh, we can go up and down the list. You guys have done that, I'm sure, on Purple Daily a bunch. But there are so many teams looking for an upgrade at the quarterback position that I'm positive the Vikings are at least willing to listen.
Yeah. All right. Let's real quick here. So, Doogie, I want to get your thoughts on a little reckless trade idea that.
Reckless speculation.
Sam Darnold.
I think you know where I'm going here. I'm going to play you a clip. All right. By the way,
I'm on Twitter.
It has nothing to do with Sam Darnold, but we're gonna play a clip here real quick. So, the Panthers flagship radio station, the WFNZ in Charlotte, reached out, and I think they initially reached out to Judd for middays, but Judd's a busy man who has many sources to speak to, and Judd cannot be bothered.
A lot of surly beers to chug.
Exactly. So let's go get the squirrely sidekick guy and see. That guy hates Kirk Cousins, so maybe he'll pour some cold water on this. The hosts of this afternoon show were not exactly thrilled about the idea of acquiring Kirk Cousins, so they figured, let's bring the number one Kirk hater on the show, and maybe he can debunk it. And I took it, Doogie, as an opportunity to shine a light on all of Kirk's positive qualities for the Charlotte audience and any Carolina Panthers executives that may be listening. Maybe we can help the Vikings boost his trade value. And so here was one of the ideas I floated to them.
All right, I'm going to be Vikings front office, you be Panthers front office, and so you have called me according to my colleague Judd Zolgad, and I'm going to entertain this, and I'm going to throw two offers. I'll start with this first offer. Panthers get Kirk Cousins. Vikings take on the Sam Darnold contract. So you can just be done with the disaster that's Sam Darnold. So Kirk Cousins, Panthers, Sam Darnold comes to the Vikings along with the number 6 overall pick.
No, this team doesn't have a day 2 pick. And I don't know how they're getting it back. And they need offensive line help. I just don't think that's what I tend to gather from our listeners is a big reason why they say no. Others have, different motivations behind that. But, this team gave up a 3rd-round pick to trade for C.J. Henderson. They gave up a 6th to trade for Stephon Gilmore, who may walk when it's all said and done. With the desperate needs they have on the offensive line, I don't know how you could justify giving away 6 and Sam Darnold, which is not a deal breaker for anybody, but 6 for Kirk Cousins without a means and no money left, I would think, to solve your offensive line issues. Does that make sense?
Now, I will tell you, Kirk Cousins did have a career-high 4 game-winning drives in 2021. He is the 2-minute Terminator. He is the late-game luminary. So you would get the prowess that is Mr. Game-winning drive down the stretch. I think one of them was against the Lions, but, that's still, No,
it's here. He came in and got one of those. Here. Yeah.
Reckless speculation.
I'm biting if I'm the Panthers.
Now, I said, what if it's a pick swap in the first round, okay? If you swap the 6 and the 12, and then, you guys kick in like a 3rd-round pick next year or something. And they were more open to that idea. They were actually very open to that idea. So, we'll see.
I would be incredibly open. I don't know why Carolina would be. But if I'm the Vikings and I can get the 6th overall pick, forget about Darnold. If I get the 6th overall pick for Kirk Cousins,
you're in.
That to me is the ultimate no-brainer.
But part of the way you build the value,
I don't know why Carolina would do that.
Right. Well, let me shine some light on that for you, Doogie.
So I know that Carolina, you guys have been in sort of a mess lately, but at least Matt Rule and Ben McAdoo are offensive-minded guys that can connect with Kirk Cousins. And so when you start to look at, Cousins from a statistical standpoint, fifth best passer rating in NFL history, ahead of Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, Steve Young. I'm not quite putting him in that category, but I mean, his numbers are pretty ridiculous. Third highest completion percentage in NFL history. He helped rack up 3,000 receiving yards almost for Justin Jefferson over the first 2 seasons. He really just needs a new home that will embrace him and put some offensive-minded coaches around him. And then you look at the Panthers division. I know it's been 5-win purgatory for the Panthers the last few seasons, but no Tom Brady in the division, no Bruce Arians in the division. The Falcons are a disaster. I feel like Kirk Cousins is the Panthers' gravitational pull back to 8, 9, or 10 wins, just like he's been throughout his entire career. Anything beyond that, it's sort of, still in question. But if you're looking for a quarterback to pull you from 5-win purgatory to at least contending for the playoffs or winning a weak division, he's a pretty perfect fit. I'm not going to lie.
How did they not cut you? How did they not cut you off at some point for that? He needs a place to embrace him.
Calling into the commissioner's office.
He needs a place to embrace him. If that was my show, I would have cut your ass off.
Ben McAdoo, come on.
The greatest high school gym teacher of all time, becoming a National Football League head coach. Unbelievable.
He would be an upgrade. I mean, it's not like the bar is real high there in Charlotte, but he'd be a significant upgrade. And I'm all about, I might be in the minority on this. If you talk to Mark Wilf, at least on the record, he strongly disagrees, but I have no problem hitting the reset button. I really don't. I love the Alabama quarterback. I love the Ohio State quarterback. I know you can't, outright tank, but if you can position yourself to have the highest possible draft pick 1 year from now, then maneuver if you need to get in a position to draft one of those guys, I'd be all for that scenario.
Or, Dukes, accumulate 2023 draft picks, including, let's say, an additional first rounder, and then have the goods to move up in said draft. That's what I think. So, because this team could come back and have loads of fun and win some games. There's no guarantee this team is going to suck. What I keep saying is, and I think it's accurate, they need a reset. You can't say we're going to change the culture and keep the roster the same. So you either choose new culture or same roster. But if you go and let's say, in fact, I got this suggestion on Twitter a couple days ago. If you trade, let's say, Kirk to Carolina, you give them 12, they give you 6, and you expand the agreement to include Carolina's first round pick in 23, something like that. Then you've got your own first round pick, Carolina's, which might be, which if they get Kirk should not be terrible, right? But those 2 draft picks would give you the ability then to make some calls to, let's say, a top 5 drafting team and say, hey, here's the trade. But
Judd, who's going to play quarterback in 2022 for the Vikings?
But here's what I don't get. I don't get
it doesn't matter.
No, but here's what I don't understand at all. The faction of the fan base that listens to the Wilf say the culture has to change, which I think we all agree with. Like it got bad. So they agree completely. But then when Mark Wilf spins, but we plan on trying to win in 22, which, by the way, what else is Mark going to say? We're going to suck. I hope we're terrible. He's not going to say that. The fan base says, but you can't but Kirk has to come back. And so it's no, you can't have it both ways.
People are overstating how bad of a coach Mike Zimmer was. People are taking it way too far. Mike Zimmer averaged 10 wins per season in the 4 years before Kirk Cousins signed, won 2 divisions, went to an NFC championship game. He was 16 games above 500, had no disaster seasons. His disaster seasons were 7-win seasons. Mike Zimmer was a damn good NFL coach with flaws, definitely, cantankerous, sort of old school, run the ball control. I'm not saying he was flawless. But for the people that think, okay, Mike Zimmer was the cancer. This team would have been a 14-win team every year if not for the cancer that was Mike Zimmer. It's just, Mike Zimmer, no one thought Mike Zimmer was this incompetent boob 3 years ago. And now all of a sudden, he's the reason for all the Vikings' problems. People are taking that narrative way too far, and I'm not even trying to defend Mike Zimmer. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, Zim would tell you, heck, Not like I told Dalvin to fumble in overtime in Cincinnati. Not like I told Greg Joseph to miss an easy field goal week 2 in Arizona. Not like I told Cam Dantzler to be 20 yards off St. Brown at Ford Field in Detroit. Not like I told Patrick Peterson to get hurt and be out for that game, and then Peterson would have been in that position to not make such a mistake. Now, the comeback is like, how the heck did you win the game against Detroit here, right? So that would be the comeback to Zim, that it goes both ways. But yes, any sort of narrative suggesting that Zim was like some sort of train wreck, give me a bleeping break. Hey, by the way, on Cousins, so Carolina then would pay him. So if you're working out a trade, whether it's Carolina or you name the franchise, that would entail, right, conversations with Cousins' representation about a contract extension, right? Because you're just not taking on the last year of his deal without some sort of guarantee that he's going to be there for multiple more years. So then what does that contract look like? Or in your world, Phil, is Carolina the team that says, okay, he's such an upgrade, yeah, we'll give him $40 million a year?
Yeah, so if they do, I don't want to get super into the weeds here, but so Over the Cap has a great restructure tool. And if the Panthers do some simple restructures of some of their highest paid players right now, they can clear $40-ish million in cap space. So, and that, by the way, includes Sam Darnold being on the roster. So, like, part of this deal would be the Vikings would, and then again, it has nothing to do with Darnold. You could cut him for all I care. I'm just saying, like, you would eat the $18 million in Darnold's or eat some, whatever. You would offset some of the money and you would take Darnold on as like a backup quarterback. I saw people running with it like, how dumb are the SKOR North guys? They think it's like, there's nothing to do with Sam Darnold.
It has nothing to do with Sam Darnold. Give me the 6th pick.
Correct.
I'm just telling you. Like, I don't see why Carolina would do that.
Yeah. And the SKOR North guys, they're pretty dumb. So
we are dumb, okay.
But let's not
yeah, I can't debate
gloss
that.
over that. That's a pretty dumb crew.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, that's, to me, I think it's, Kirk doesn't have a no-trade clause, but because he's got this huge bloated cap hit and he's a free agent after next year, he can essentially say, well, you can trade me to Carolina, but I'm not going to negotiate an extension. I'm going to play it out. And by the way, it's a $45 million hit for the Vikings, but it would only be a $35 million hit for the Panthers, so it wouldn't be quite as aggressive. But that contract is a de facto no-trade clause because he can just say, all right, yeah, trade me there, but I'm not going to negotiate.
Correct.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, so he still has the hammer. He's had the hammer for a long time. He still has the hammer.
Yeah. What about, Danielle Hunter's the other one here that's just, he's not getting as much pub, but he's got this, $18 million roster bonus here in a few weeks. And he, before the injuries, he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's still in his prime, Doogie. Any thoughts or ideas or information on what may happen? And by the way, the Vikings are moving to a 3-4 base defense too, and so that's going to be a thing. What are your thoughts on Danielle?
Well, I mean, freak of an athlete. So do I think he could be fine in a 3-4 base when you have some different 4-3 looks anyway, nickel defense, what have you? I think he would be okay. So, yeah, it's an $18 million roster bonus due March 21st. You can spread that out, turn that into a signing bonus, and keep him that way. The cap hit is $26.1 million. So among non-quarterbacks, I don't know if NFL Network did the research on that. I'd be curious to see where the 26.1 ranks. Non-quarterbacks. I would imagine, Judd, what do you think? Top 10?
Yeah,
there might be another defensive lineman or two above that.
It's probably top 10. Yeah.
Maybe even top 5.
Yes.
Curious maybe what Jalen Ramsey, some other cornerbacks might be at. But 26.1 for a cap hit is ridiculously high. Like we talk about Cousins eating up 21.5% of the 2022 salary cap at $45 million. What's $26.1 million eat up?
And let's go back.
I'm not Will Hunting. I apologize. I can't do that math top of my head, but that's still a good chunk. So something needs to take place. But
it's like
I'm telling you, it could be as simple as how much? 10%?
No, I'd say he's like the 10th highest non-quarterback cap hit. You're right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, top 10. So, but I'm telling you, it can be as simple as just converting that roster bonus into a signing bonus. I made the point with Judd on Tuesday, Phil, that Danielle's guy is Andre Patterson. And I'm still surprised that the Vikings never had a conversation with Andre about staying. That conversation never took place. I thought it would. There's a number of Andre Patterson fans at TCO Performance Center, but it never happened. He's now with the New York Giants. I'm telling you, more than Zim, more than Pico, some other people there with the Vikings, like Danielle's guy, Andre Patterson. So I can't help but wonder if Andre goes to Giants management at some point and says, hey, at least make the phone call. That's my guy. We need pass rushing help here. Let's find a way to bring Danielle to New York.
And let's go back to, though, because I feel like these conversations sometimes get into the weeds of like who needs to be restructured, what needs to be done to keep this guy or that guy. Let's go back and understand, too, that you don't fire your GM and coach not to make changes. So, like, if there was ever a time to look at the top of the cap hits, Cousins, Hunter, Thielen, Kendrick, Smith, Cook, and say,
Pierce,
who's going to be gone right now is the time. So like, you're not going to say, how can we milk another year from said guy? You're going to say, if we're going to move on from this player because of his status or because of his cap hit, why wait till after 22? Let's do it right now. So, because I see that I saw a tweet today about, well, the Packers are going to bring back Aaron and Devontae, and you're saying that the Vikings are in cap hell. What about the Packers? The Packers are trying to run it back as much as they possibly can.
They've been to 3 straight NFC championships,
and it's their 2 best players. but the point is, if this was Zimmer and Spielman, then yes, these conversations about how can you make this work are on point. But the changes that have been made give Kwesi and O'Connell carte blanche to make changes, to flip things, to make decisions that, guess what? They're going to be unpopular. But their job is not to make popular decisions for a fan base that owns Cousins and Hunter and Thielen jerseys. Their job is to make decisions that give the Vikings the best chance at a championship in an upcoming 4 to 5 year period. So, like, I feel like we get bogged down in this. How can the Vikings remain relevant with this crew? The day that Spielman and Mike got fired, that went out the window.
Also, well, 2 things. One, the Packers came up short of the NFC Championship game, but the Packers have won 13 games. The Packers are like one of the 4 best teams in the NFL. So they're trying to run it back and get out of cap hell because they still have a Super Bowl window. People talk about the Vikings like they are the Rams, like they are the Packers, and they just had a couple bad luck injuries. The Packers had more injury bad luck than the Vikings did this year. You know, I mean, give me a break. The Vikings haven't been above 500 in like 800 days. They are not a team on the cusp. They aren't one coaching change away from all of a sudden being a Super Bowl champion, right? So you got to look at this objectively, I guess. That's my main takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, you missed the playoffs 3 of 4 years. You're right. When was the last time they were above 500? We need to go back to, what, 2019?
Yeah, the end of the 2019 season.
Yeah, the end of the 2019 season. So, yeah, I mean, this roster still needs all sorts of help. And, I mean, Green Bay, you're right. Their window is still wide open. They are kicking the can down the road, right? At some point,
yes,
they'll have to pay up, you know, with this reworking of the Kenny Clark contract, this reworking of the Aaron Jones contract. They'll eventually have to pay the price on that. That's where we're at with the Vikings, right? Where they've kicked the can down the road on some guys. You know, made some decisions that in hindsight maybe they should not have made. Like re-signing Anthony Barr. Should have just let him go to New York with the Jets. You know, other similar type decisions. But yeah, like Kwesi has a 4-year contract. Kevin has a 4 or 5 year contract. I think, you know, there's some leash there. There's some leeway. But like you get this thing wrong in the next few years, you are not guaranteed any sort of contract extension. So you're right. The time is now. Some hard decisions. Now, like on Adam Thielen, because his cap hit is what, 16.92 or 95 million. He's number 3 on the team. I absolutely see a restructure coming there. That I see Adam Thielen in purple this year, that he'll agree to lower his number. Whatever that looks like, I see Adam Thielen here this year.
Yeah. All right, Dukes, give us some rapid fire scoops here. What else is in your scoop bag?
Well, we've got the draft combine next week. There are some Minnesotans that will take part, including Jermaine Johnson, Eden Prairie High School. He went to a community college, a JUCO, in Kansas. In fact, what was the Netflix show?
Last Chance U?
Last Chance U. He was on one of those teams that Last Chance U featured. Then he ends up at Georgia, has a good run as a Bulldog. Then he is a graduate transfer to Florida State for his last year. Blows up in Tallahassee. Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock draft has Jermaine Johnson going top 10. So an Eden Prairie kid to keep an eye on next week with the Combine. Really? Then Boye Mafe, Golden Valley native, former Hopkins High School star, former Gopher. Jeremiah had him going 27 or 28, late first round. So there's some pretty good Minnesota flavor. Then you've got, guys like Blaze Andrews from Marshall, Minnesota, the former Gophers offensive lineman. There's also a kid from Rocori. His name is Matt Waletzko. And he went to the University of North Dakota, multi-year starter, might have even started, right as a freshman or redshirt freshman. But anyway, he had a good run down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, so he'll be at the Combine. Interesting connection there. So the new Vikings offensive line coach, I should have his name in front of me, but he's a North Dakota guy. Not like there's a whole lot of North Dakota offensive linemen walking around. So I'm telling you, keep an eye on that name, Matt Waletzko from Rocori. And with that North Dakota connection with the Vikings offensive line coach, I'll be tracking his happenings starting next week.
All right. There he is, Darren Doogie Wolfson, inside information.
Then, Phil, I suppose, I can mention that, just about every Twins minor leaguer right now is in Fort Myers. Rocco Baldelli's down there. The entire coaching staff, they're able to work with the non-40-man guy. So, it's business as usual if you're not on the 40-man roster. Technically, guys don't need to be in Fort Myers until next Tuesday. But just with the dormitory and all that, all the meals they have down there, it's a great setup for minor leaguers. Not pay-wise, but just in terms of, amenities. So just about every Twins minor leaguer is right now in Fort Myers. I've been asked about this Cuban free agent. His name is Luis Danny Morales. Got a couple questions on Twitter because the Twins were at a showcase for him in Mexico City a few weeks ago. He's going to end up signing for seven figures, $1 to $2 million. He still falls under the international free agency umbrella. So the Twins spent too much money. They don't have enough money, I guess, is the bottom line. That the Twins like this guy. His upside is really good. Like, there's some scouts say he's a number 2, number 3 type starter in a few years. He's 19, so he's not 16. He's 19 years old. Luis Danny Morales throws a 97, 98, good off-speed stuff. But the Twins just don't have enough money to sign him. They'd love to sign him.
And they
just don't have the money.
And that's cheap poll ads, or that's within the structure of the international signing pool?
That would be the latter, but I'm sure a lot of people will gravitate toward the narrative of the former. But yeah, they don't have enough money from their pool of money for this year's international free agency class. Each team is allotted a certain amount of money. The Twins have spent a good portion of that money, including giving a couple guys 7-figure bonuses. So they have spent a good amount of money on international free agents, so that pool of money is no longer available. Then Wolves tonight against the Grizzlies. Wolves tomorrow night against Philadelphia. Philadelphia practicing later today at the U of M practice facility.
Alrighty.
So yeah, they'll be over at Ben Johnson's court.
I was going to ask a couple baseball follow-ups, but we're so done with baseball right now that we're just
Judd nailed it. I'm telling you. Judd, more than anybody I know, foresaw this 6 to 9 months ago, saying the owners. Now, I don't want to suggest like there's no deal that the owners would agree to, because if they literally can negotiate, every term that they want, of course they would say, yes, let's get this deal done. Like, let's say I have a Mercedes, Phil, you have a Ford Tempo, and I said, hey, I'll trade you my Mercedes for your Ford Tempo. Yeah, okay. So, like, that's where the owners are. But, like, any sort of reasonable middle ground, like, the owners just don't have an interest in getting a deal done. Yeah. So, like, I have a hard time believing in the next few days, even though they're meeting, they're not going to get a deal done. No. I don't know what the season is going to look like. I think a deal eventually gets done, but Judd nailed it, I'm telling you, last summer, saying this is going to last for a while. Yeah. The owners have no interest in getting a reasonable deal done. And that's the evidence. There's no evidence to suggest the owners want to get a reasonable deal done. So this thing is going to last for a while.
Yeah. All right, Dukes.
Keep lasting for a while. Yeah, it's sad.
Unfortunate. Thanks.
See you next week.
All right,
Doogie.
see you, boys.
Awesome,
bye-bye.
Reckless Speculation.
Reckless speculation today. Well, that was good. Presented by our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. Federated's been around for over 100 years helping businesses with risk management and maximizing their upside. You can find out more about all the tools and resources Federated provides at federatedinsurance.com.
I've got one question. What did the CEO of Vikings Twitter think about that scoop session? Because I'm curious what I know what I thought. I guess I don't care what Dex thought. You're the CEO of Vikings Twitter.
The CEO of Vikings Twitter.
What do you think about it?
Tends to look at things from a 30,000-foot perspective.
He has to.
And he appreciates any sort of dialogue that will push Vikings Twitter into a championship mindset. Okay. That's listen. I as the Vikings Twitter CEO promise to communicate openly and honestly with everyone, whether you are a Vikings Twitter member with 50 followers or whether you have 15,000 followers. I can't promise that there won't be layoffs at some point in and among Vikings Twitter. That's just a product of the climate that we're in right now. Good. But I will keep you abreast of the situation
through these difficult times,
these challenging times. Yes.
And he did not communicate that all of us wear gray today, which I think all three of us, for whatever reason, are all wearing like the same style type of polo. Philly's got a hoodie on at least, but Judd and I think, are wearing the exact same type of pullover.
Wow, so. Real exciting day, color-wise,
real exciting
on the show.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. Big time.
So